Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and all the special guests behind me. I appreciate you all being here because there's some pending legislation which each all of us in this room on this side of the line consider to be devastating for those who are involved in a catastrophic accident. Public, in their wisdom, back in the 70s, passed legislation which we now know as all or no fault. And the legislature that came along in 1992 and said, hey, we're going to change it and put it to a vote of the people. 63% said no, leave it the way it is. They came back in 94. Maybe you didn't understand what we were offering you. We'll give you a chance to reform. That's their word, reform. All or no fault, and about 61% said leave it alone. So twice the legislature's gone to the public and asked them to reform, again, their word, all or no fault. Twice they've been seriously rebuffed by 2/3 of the voting public. So this time they didn't bother asking the public. They just processed and passed some legislation that will dramatically and drastically impact innocent people who have been involved in catastrophic accidents. This is an industry, this is insurance industry's dream. I've been reading every analysis I can get my hands on since this so-called substitute bill was first introduced a couple weeks ago by Speaker Bolger. And every one of them says that the insurance industry is laughing their way to the bank. This is a pro-insurance industry, anti-victim piece of legislation. And that's as harsh as I can make it. And it's most unfortunate that Speaker Bolger has made this his legislative goal for this term, because there are so many, hidden fish hooks in this legislation that I don't even have time this morning to go through half of them. But I'll give the highlights of why we're so vehemently opposed. And then I'll introduce my colleagues from Wayne and Macomb, and then the State Representative Thomas Allred, who's the head of the Michigan Black Caucus, will be here to speak on behalf of the city of Detroit. So I think you see some unanimity in our opposition here, and then I would introduce you to the other guests behind me. I got to make it clear from the onset that my accident was like 18 months ago, and my driver, Jim, is still paralyzed from the neck down, will be a quadriplegic the rest of his life. We don't get a dime from the all or no fault fund, just so you know that. We were on duty when we were hit, therefore we're here being covered, our expenses being covered by workers' compensation. So I'm not here to protect my revenue stream. Please understand that. There's a substitute bill. The first bill was 4612, House Bill 4612. And that was just utterly disastrous. I think it capped the injuries at $1 million. My driver, remember my accident was 18 months ago. My driver, Jimmy, even though we're not under this fund, he gives me a way to gauge it. It's already gone through $3 million. It's now looking at $4 million in expenses. So giving us $1 million cap was illusory at best. It was just it looked good to the public. $1 million is a lot of money. But when if you're recovering from an accident like Jim and I sustained, or like Eric sustained, $1 million is basically round one of a long struggle to try to regain some physical strength back. Things that I find most of the states about this legislation are not even in the press release. I mean, things like, how about the fact that the Catastrophic Claims Association, the ones that are administering this $17-point-something billion fund, uses Cayman bank accounts that we can't get to, we can't examine. We say, well, why? And they say, well, we have no duty to disclose. And then they come along and raise the rates from auto no fault from 179 this year to 186. So, well, what justified raising it to $7? So it's based on our actuarial assumptions. Well, let us see your actuarial assumptions. Let us judge if it was required, if it was even reasonable. No, we can't show you those. They're so complicated you wouldn't understand them. So they operate in secrecy. They operate offshore when they choose to. It's just, and we're talking about $17 billion. And one of the reasons they raised the rate is because the fund was not sustainable. But it's growing. When I first got into this fight a couple of years ago, it was $14 billion. Now it's $17 billion. The fund is sustainable, and we don't have to try to make corrections that frankly were written by the insurance industry. This is an insurance industry draft, pure and simple. And why Bolger is so insistent on promoting it, you have to ask yourself that question. When everybody's lining up against it. The House representatives, they can't even get it out of his own committees in the House. Republicans and Democrats alike have smelled a rat on this one. And I think, frankly, I know what it's all about. Mr. Bolger is term limited, and he's out of office in about 8 months. Where's he going to get a job? I'm challenging him to answer this question. Are you going to work for the auto industry, for the insurance industry? Or are you going to work for a lobbying firm that represents insurance industries? If he says no, I'll accept this answer. But he's been asked that question 4 or 5 times, and he won't answer. So I think that's what it's all about. It's a little bit of doing a favor for the insurance industry in the hopes of landing a job when he's out of office. Some of the problems with the current piece of legislation, there's still going to be a cap on recovery. The first bill was $1 million. Now they're kicking it up to 10. 10 sounds like a lot, and it is a lot, but we know people who have gone through 10 already. A little 5-year-old girl, for instance, that I'm sure some of our guests here can address better than I, who 10 million is not even going to begin to cover her expenses and her recovery. So there's still a cap in here. The public, that's one of the issues that the public voted on back in 1994, said, no, we don't want a cap, leave it alone. It limits the amount of time that your family can give you in home care to be compensated for that home care. And yet, there's studies that show that when family members give care at home, it's probably more meaningful in the long run than when you actually bring in the service, since it's a family member that's rendering the service, whatever it might be. Here's one that really doesn't make sense. There's a 52-week, this is in the new compromise legislation, 52-week on physical therapy, Olympic. Well, if I were under that fund, I'm in my 19th, going on now 19 months, I'm still in a wheelchair, and I do therapy 3 days a week. So what happens to people like that who they go through the year and they're still not fully recovered? Well, they're left to their own devices, they're left to their own, obviously their own pocketbook, and it's very expensive, and for people who are involved in catastrophic accidents, it is long, long term. So it's arbitrarily put in a 52-week limit. The substitute bill that the insurance industry drafted would say passenger in your car who's not a Michigan resident is not covered. So if your relatives come in from out of state, they ride with you at their own risk. The MCCA, Michigan Catastrophic Claims Association, will still not open its books. I told you that before, when it makes these actuarial assumptions. And they're talking like I've seen Bolger's press releases on this. They talk about reforming the auto rates. We're talking about $186. That's what the auto no fault is. $186. Is that going to make any difference to people in Detroit whose insurance is at $3,000, $4,000, $5,000? That's not where the real cost centers are. We know that. Say collision, theft, all the issues you have to insure against. And then make matters worse. He talks about cutting costs, and then it's a $25 fee in the new legislation to cover the gap in Medicaid. And that won't be there just for 1 year or 2 years. That's going to be a permanent tax that we're going to have to pay to cover the cost of Medicaid, which was expanded because of Obamacare. So I've just given you some of the highlights. So he's going to give you a 10% savings for a couple of years. There's nobody in this room that doesn't believe that the auto industry, that's right, that the auto insurance companies will not raise their rates after that 2-year period is up. I think I've debated people in this before, and I have debated Peter Lund, one of the authors. It's talking about it's hard to come out against a reform bill, because reform ranks right up there with motherhood and apple pie. Everybody's for reform, because it suggests something's broken and you're going to fix it. But in this instance, it's not broken. It's working the way it was designed. It's being called probably the best system in America by today. Some of our opponents have switched sides. And it's one man's reform is another man's death sentence. When people taking off this kind of catastrophic care, You eventually have to go into their own pocket. Nobody can afford what the costs are for catastrophic care. So they'll go on Medicaid, and then the taxpayers pick up the bill instead of the insurance company. That's what this is all about, folks. Let's move it out of insurance over to Medicaid, and then the taxpayers can subsidize the care for those individuals. I've got other people who want to say something this morning, so let me go on. First, let me introduce some of the people who are here from some statewide associations. We have from the Brain Injury Association, which oftentimes is a byproduct of an accident like we're talking about. There's Mike Dabbs and Tom Constant. Why don't you guys raise your hand when I introduce you, okay? Mike and Tom. Chris Mitchell from the Michigan Health and Hospital Association. Natalie Lombardo and attorney Brandon Hewitt, who are from the Michigan Auto Law firm opposing any change in the no-fault. The coalition, I hear a lot about CPAN, the Coalition to Protect Auto No-Fault. There's John Prosser, John Karnak, and Kevin McKinney are here. You've heard me mention Eric Colston. Eric was in an accident about 13 years ago now, and obviously was left as a quad, even though through tough recovery and exercise here in her own studio. She's now sitting up in a chair like I have, making, I think, a miraculous recovery. She's an inspiration to people who've been in these kinds of accidents. She's, Erica and her husband, Ira, are hosting us here this morning, and we appreciate that. This gives you an idea of what people who have been catastrophically injured, what they have to look forward to. This kind of therapy for the rest of their lives. Fred Nader, who's Erica's father, he's a prominent businessman. He's really an excellent spokesperson for our side. I may have him come up here before the news conference is over. And Lisa, Mazzino? Mazzio, thank you, Lisa. Mazzio from Advent Medical. And I see some legislators behind me. How are you? Phil? Why don't you introduce yourselves? Oh, no, time you're going to speak. Tom Stallworth, who represents Detroit in the House and head of the Michigan Black Caucus, is going to speak because Mr. Ugden was able to make it this morning. Phil, I think I introduced you. Did I miss anybody else? Where's Gail? Oh, over there. Hi, Gail. I'm over here standing with the crowd. So with that, I'm delighted to have two of my colleagues here from the Big Four. I think Bob is going to go first. Bob from Conway, Maine County Exec, and we'll bring up Mark Hackle. Once you get the flavor, it's not just a Republican, Brooks Patterson, who has such strong feelings. This cuts across politics. This gets right into how we treat some of the people in our society, most of all. With that.